Hey, this is Jeremiah. Welcome back to my basement. Today I am wearing a blue, purpley pocket tee. Obvious stain right here. I think this is the same one I was wearing last week. I when I got married, so my second marriage, my current marriage. Um, so this was years ago, but my wife and I were trying to be smart, and we had this book about it had like 100 questions or 150 questions or 300, I don't know what it was, questions to go over with your partner before you get married. And it's made a lot of sense to go through it. For some reason, people are willing to get married or go into committed, buy property together, long term committed relationships without ever actually discussing important topics like the big stuff like kids, religion, politics, but also the little stuff like, you know, chores and I don't know, whatever else. So this book was really it was well designed to help you answer a lot of those questions. And one of the questions was about laundry, and so we're talking about how we do our laundry, and my wife said, "Okay, here's the deal. No more clothes on the floor. I can't deal with it. No clothes on the floor." And I said, "Okay, listen. Here's how I do my clothes. My work clothes. I wear the work clothes. They go to the laundry. When they're clean, I immediately hang them up because I don't want to have to iron them. But my non-work clothes, my casual clothes, they go from laundry to clean laundry basket to I wear them to when I get in bed that night, I put them on the floor." And eventually they'll make their way into the dirty laundry basket and then back into the laundry. But they never see a drawer. They're never put away. They're never folded. And they spend time on the floor. And I told my wife, "Listen, I'm a 35-year-old man. I have been doing this my entire adult life. And I'm sorry. I'm not going to change." And that was just one of the things where she was just like, okay, like, I'm not going to fight you about it if it's, whatever. So, yeah, so it was one of those things, like my clothes. So apparently I wore this last week. Well, you really wanted to know about that, didn't you? So what do I want to talk about? Well, man, yesterday I put out a video about CCIE, and, I've been kind of open the last few months. It has not been going good, and things are kind of on hold, and whatever. I'm trying to like be realistic about it because I don't want to get too depressed about things, but stuff's going on in life that's really just keeping me from studying. It's the way it is. It'll eventually clear up and I'll get back to studying. It is what it is. But man, I got a bunch of comments from people who were, telling me that the CCIE is dead. It's dumb. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Nobody wants CCIEs anymore. What a waste. And, I gotta say, that's a little scary. What if I put all this time and energy and effort into the CCIE and I don't get anything for it? What if I can't even get a job? What if I wasted all this time and thousands of dollars in books and lab and study material and going to take the test, It's nerve-wracking. It's a little scary. What if they're right? And, the thing is, in some ways they're right, but in a lot of ways they're wrong. And I want to talk about it. Um, so let's kind of get into this here. There's so many different angles worth covering. And I guess one of the first things it's worth noting is you only know what you know. I see a lot of people who they get into a career in IT. That career is relatively narrow. They work in hospitality. They work in, the medical industry, or they work in the banking industry, and that's where they're at. And they're always at, some within that constraint. And you also see that most people. Let's draw this out. Let's draw this out. Let's come over here. And yes, and we'll go a little bit thicker. Okay, so let's do this. This is going to upset some people, and the truth is, I don't care. This is reality. So this is population, and this is intelligence. and we'll just abbreviate that IQ. I'm writing on a little tablet, forgive me. And what we see, please forgive, I'm going to do the best I can. What we see is intelligence is a standard distribution. All right? Here's average intelligence. So everyone over here, everyone on this side is below average, and everyone on this side is above average. All right? Now, this is important to understand for many reasons, but becomes really important as we move into this more advanced, economy that is based on not so much labor, where labor is going away, and it's not so much who can run the machine at the factory, who can pull the lever or stomp the pedal, which I did. I used to work in a window factory, and I did both of those things: pulled a lever and stomped a pedal, pushed a button to build windows. It's no longer about that, because basically, anyone can do that, maybe except for, here's like the percentage. Like, these people are just, I'm sorry, it's very difficult for these folks to participate in the economy. Like, they're just not smart enough. Their brains just are not working enough. Say, let's go like an orange. So, these people, they're the manual laborers, right? These are the folks who are doing the manual labor. They can handle that job just fine. Now, someone doing manual labor might be smarter than this, but this person is really limited to that manual labor. Then you have, like, let's say up to about here. This is a big chunk of the population. And these people are the vast majority of people, right? And they're working all the main jobs. And some of them aren't so bright. Some of them are pretty bright. But they're working in the vast majority of jobs. Then you come over and you have, let's say these people. Here we have the beginnings of the intellectual, mentally, slightly above average. So these are going to be your, tier 2 IT folks, tier 2, tier 3 IT folks. These are going to be your, there might be lawyers in here. There might be doctors. If you've ever worked with doctors, not all doctors are geniuses. There's a lot of middling doctors. So these are going to be your professionals, right? And then we're going to come over to here, and here we have, these are your advanced professionals. So the blue folks are maybe programmers. The green folks, these are the senior programmers. These are the senior network engineers. These are the people who are designing chips, So someone, like, say, a senior network engineer could be on the high side of the blue or maybe the low side of the green. And then you have, we'll just call this white. These are the super smart people. These are your advanced surgeons, your advanced PhDs. This is a small part, and this is not accurate, right? I suspect this white part is probably smaller. These blue and green parts might be distributed a little bit differently. But so here is roughly intelligence. So you need to be aware of this. Why do you need to be aware of this? Well, quite frankly, and this, again, this is kind of mean to say, but reality is sometimes mean, is most of the people in IT are going to be, from here to here, right? These are your help desk. These are your tier 1. These are your tier 2 people. And A lot of the people that are going, what you're going to find is when you start to advance, when you start to succeed, these people want to keep you down. They want to hold you back. Because what happens for them is they've hit the wall. This tier 1 person right here, he was struggling. He worked to get his CCNA, and he spent 2 years studying for his CCNA. He finally, after 2 years of studying, passes the CCNA, but he's still struggling. Like, he can't really go anywhere beyond that. That's the most he can do. And he was able to get a tier 2 job in networking. That's all he'll ever do. We have this person over here. I'm talking in Cisco terms because, I know that all off the top of my head. Here's a person, Cisco guy. He got his CCNP, right? And he worked hard at it. He got it. He's now tier 3. Maybe he's even an engineer. But the thing is, he knows he can't do any better. I worked with a guy, and I hope he doesn't see this because, we are friends. But this is the truth. I worked with this guy. He was a smart guy. He was working in a different department, but I saw that he had potential. But I also knew that in the department that he was working in, he really didn't have the money to pay for career advancement, and the company wasn't going to pay for it. But I liked this guy. I knew he had potential. So I sat down and said, listen, I think you can do this. If you promise me to study every day, I'm just asking for like a half hour every day, I will pay for your study material and I'll pay for you to take the test. So he did it. He got his CCNA, and then I think he got his CCNA voice, which I think was a thing back then. And he might have, I don't think he ever got a CCNP, but he was operating in that level, like a CCNP voice engineer. And he was very, well respected within our company. Did a great job. It got to the point, now I had already left the company, but the company needed a a voice CCIE. They needed a CCIE voice. They had to have one to maintain their status with Cisco. This guy says, hey, I can do it. I'm smart. I can do it. They built him a lab. The company paid for him to build a lab. They gave him time off, months and months, where he just worked from home and studied. He took that test, the CCIE voice test, 5 times. He failed every time before he finally just gave up. He's a smart guy, but he's over here and he peaked. He maxed out. That's all he's ever going to do. He's going to be a high mid-tier, low top-tier engineer. That's the most he can handle. This is difficult for people to understand, and it's difficult for people to accept because we're all told you can do anything, you can be anything. No, you can't. We are in fact limited by many factors. Our own intelligence is just one of them. So as you begin to succeed in life and excel, you're going to find that, look, if you're here, these guys are going to want to pull you back. And if you're here, these guys are going to want to pull you back. And, vice versa. There's always going to be some people who are in your life and they're encouraging you to move forward. But you're also going to find that there's other people who are just, frankly, they're jealous. Or they're scared. They don't want to be left behind. Or if you can succeed, what does that say about them? If you can succeed, then they must be a failure. Or you must be better than they are. And so, it fucks with our heads. And so we actually try to hold people back. It's hard to get upset with people for doing that because it's just human nature. But you're going to experience this. All right. Now, I'm not saying that the people who are criticizing me in the comments are not intelligent people. They very well may be very intelligent people, and maybe they are smarter than I am. I don't know. But I am saying that as you try to advance yourself, you're going to run into naysayers. This is part of the issue. But that's only part of the issue. There's quite a bit more to talk about. So hang in there. Now let's talk about one other thing about intelligence. So I'm going to clear this up. Let's do one other thing about intelligence here. You've probably heard of this before. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm not going to try to spell it. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Another chart. So this is how much you think you know versus how much you actually know. And what we find, and this is pretty universal, is that people who know, so this is, down here you know very little, and here you're an expert. Expert, novice. When someone is a novice, they tend to drastically overestimate how much they know about something. They tend to consider themselves very smart on a subject. And you don't have to look very far in today's world to find that everywhere you turn, the world is overrun with experts in virology. Everybody's an expert. I'm sure they couldn't pass an 8th grade biology test, but they're all experts in immunology, virology. And then as you learn more, you begin to recognize, oh, I don't actually know very much. And that drops off pretty quick. And then you get to the point where someone who's actually fairly well versed in a subject considers themselves to be pretty ignorant of the subject. And then as you learn more, you begin to recognize that you learn more until you get to about here. So even an expert in a subject will often feel, they'll self-assess that they are less, complete on a subject than a complete novice. So the expert will think that they know less, while the novice thinks they know more. Someone in the middle tends to think they know very little. Why is that? Well, because as a complete novice, you don't even know all the stuff you don't know. But once you've gotten here, you begin to understand, whoa, there is a lot of stuff I have no idea about. And then once you get to the expert level, you say, oh, okay, I know that there are certain things I don't know at all. But there's actually a lot of things that I do know quite a bit about. So I'm pretty much in the middle. Now, how does that relate to what we're talking about with the CCIE? Well, what you'll find is you'll find a lot of CCNA level people who think they know a lot about networking. They passed their CCNA. They've studied EIGRP and OSPF, and they understood the basics of switching and spanning tree and VLANs. They know quite a bit about networking. And then here you have your CCNP, perhaps. And they have a better view. They say, well, there's a lot that I don't know, but I'm still pretty good. I'm still pretty competent in networking. After all, I know OSPF, and I know a little bit of BGP. And so actually, I would say the CCNP is maybe more accurately over here. The CCNA is maybe over here. Not everybody. Some people have an accurate assessment. And then you start studying for your CCIE. So this person is still a CCNP. They're studying for the CCIE, and maybe they've only just started studying, or they've been studying for a few months. They've touched on all the topics, and at this point, this is when it just hits you as a CCIE candidate that, fuck me, I know so little. You know, as an example, I should have grabbed it ahead of time. I can see it from where I'm sitting. But I have my books, my stack of books that I'm reading specifically for my CCIE. A couple of those books are for the CCNP. I have, so let's just do it like this. Oops. So I read a couple books for my CCNP, maybe like this much, like maybe 2,000 pages, 1,600 to 2,000 pages for the entire CCNP, all the topics, all the routing, all the switching, everything. Couple of books, actually, yeah, a couple of books. For the CCIE, I have a stack this big just for TCP/IP, just for TCP/IP. Not even all the routing, just TCP/IP. I have a stack this big, just BGP. Just BGP. More than the entirety of the CCNP, just for BGP. I have a stack about this big, just for multicast. I have a couple of books just for VPNs. So, here's my CCNP, say 2,000 pages. For the CCIE, we're looking at 10 times that much in reading material. Not talking about all the videos and the labbing, just reading. 10 times as much. So when you get to this point and you realize, oh, fuck, I don't know anything, it can be a little disheartening. But then as you learn more and more and more, you're eventually going to get up here. And I suspect that when you pass your CCIE, depending on your experience, maybe you're closer to here, and then you keep working in the field and maybe you'll get up to there. But that's also important to understand, because the simple truth is most people who, if they have not done the CCIE, they don't even know what it is. They only have a vague conception. I think the reason why is because if you look, you have the CCNA transitioning into the CCNP. And for most of its lifespan, the CCNP is, maybe we'll say 2 to 4 times, 2 times to 4 times the amount of information needed for the CCNA. Oh, I'm cut off at the top there. Let me fix that. So this is like 2 times to 4 times the amount of knowledge. And people think that it must be the same thing for the CCNP. It's, it's roughly 2 times. But the CCNP to the CCIE is at least 10 times. So if the CCNP is already, say, 3 times what the CCNA is, then you're looking at, actually I'm not sure how to do that. Is that 30 times the amount of information? I don't think that's right. Is that right? That might be right. It's a lot more. But people don't think that. They think that it's linear. It's not linear. If anything, it's more exponential growth curve. So there is a lot more information for the CCIE. But people, they get it confused and they think it's just, it's not that much. Okay, so that's kind of the misunderstanding. But let's go just a little bit deeper into this misunderstanding about what is the CCIE. Because I think people, when they hear CCIE, they think, it's Cisco, it's just routers and switches, real simple stuff. I mean, some OSPF, some BGP, whatever. Well, here's the breakdown for the CCIE. Let's take a look at it. In the first 30%, so this is only 30% of the entire lab test. Here we have all your switching protocols, your VLANs, your channel groups, your spanning tree, all the different flavors of spanning tree, the Cisco spanning tree, the industry standard spanning tree. And it's not just like configuring. We'll get to that in a second. Then you have all your routing concepts, how routing works, summarization, policy-based routing, VRF, authentication, and then we get into the actual routing protocols, EIGRP, OSPF version 2 and 3, BGP, multicast. All right? Most people think, well, okay, that's the CCIE. No, that's 30%. That's less than a third of the CCIE. That's a fraction of the CCIE. Then we get into all the new software-defined access, software-defined WAN, all the other new protocols. You got to learn ISIS, all Lisp, all the protocols that go into making SDA and SD-WAN work, right? Then on top of that, you need to know MPLS and VPNs. You need to learn your infrastructure security. Here's another 15% of the... So this is securing your devices, all the management protocols, securing access to the devices, securing automation of the devices. I think this also includes... I thought this also included, maybe not, all the different network services. So like NAT, PAD, I'm sure DHCP's in there somewhere. Oh, the DHCP. Oh, quality of service. So there's all that. And then on top of that is automation and programmability. JSON, XML, Linux shell, Python, Ansible's in here somewhere. HTTP requests, netconf and yang, restconf and yang, remote procedure call, Google remote procedure call. So, and here's the thing that a lot of people don't get, especially when you're thinking about that whole, with the CCNP, with the CCNA and the CCNP, this is mostly about configuration. Oops. This is mostly about config and a little bit of troubleshoot. All right. CCIE is different. CCIE is complete... COMLETE. Protocol understanding. Wow, man, I cannot spell for anything. Understanding. Not gn. What do I mean by complete protocol understanding? When you're looking at a CCIE level, you're not learning how to configure something. I mean, you are, but you're learning all of the protocol. What makes the protocol work? What does the packet look like? What are all the timers for the protocol? What are the different options for the protocol? You need to understand how it works. When you're at a CCNA and a CCNP level, the vast majority of your understanding is how to configure something, and the vast majority of your troubleshooting is looking for misconfigurations. When you're at the CCIE level, you're looking at the actual packets, understanding what is being transmitted, what is being received, what is being sent back, why aren't they working together. Looking at the actual flow of data, what's really happening, versus how is this supposed to work. With the CCIE, you have to understand how it works, why it works. With the CCNA and the CCNP, you have to understand how to set it up. It's so different. It's such a hugely different skill set and mindset that people don't understand just the vast chasm between your CCNP and your CCIE. So that is, we're already a half hour in. That is just how people misunderstand what the CCIE even is. But there's more to it. There's actually more to it. So let's talk about some of the other things. First off, people say, and this is a true and fair criticism, that if you're getting your CCIE, you're focused on Cisco. And not everybody uses Cisco, and so you're never going to be able to get a job because what enterprise uses only Cisco? Well, again, let's talk about, this is the confusion. They're confusing CCNP configuring versus CCIE understanding. When I am done with the CCIE, you understand the protocols. So if I'm on a Cisco box or a Juniper box or an HP box, all I have to learn is how to configure it differently. I already understand the protocols, how they work, how they talk to each other, what the options are. I just need to look up the command. That's not that complicated. It's not that big of a deal. Becoming fluent and comfortable with a different vendor will take a little bit of time, but you already have the majority of the information because you, rather than memorizing commands, which you did have to do for Cisco, you also learned and understood the underlying technologies, the industry standard technologies that are going to exist regardless of vendor. So a huge chunk of what you're learning for your CCIE, a huge chunk, will translate to other vendors. So yes, when I'm done with my CCIE, am I going to go get some Juniper certs? Fuck yeah, I am. It'll be easy because I'll already know the technology. I just need to learn the commands. It's also worth noting that Cisco is still, they've lost a lot of market share. Look, they're not the 50, or they're not the 85, 90% market share they once were. They're 50% market share. But keep in mind, that's half of all network equipment. Half of all network equipment is Cisco. The other half is everybody else. Cisco, everybody else. So where are you going to spend your time? Are you going to study the thing that is sold more than anything else? Or are you going to study the thing that is a growing company and has a lot of potential? Or this growing company that has a lot of potential? Or this, well-established company, but they're not this, they're this. So again, 50% Cisco, 50% everybody else. You have to make a choice. Why not learn the big boy, especially at the CCIE level, when a huge chunk of that knowledge will translate to all these other ones? I think the last thing I want to cover is this idea that networking is dead. About a year ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and this guy is an intelligent guy. He's a friend of mine. His career is kind of interesting because he started off, he did a bunch of not entry level, but tier 1, tier 2 type jobs, and kind of like jack of all trades jobs, which are also tend to be lower tier, for smaller companies where he's the desktop guy and the website guy, and he's doing everything. So he knows a little bit about everything. And he managed to get in with a company, kind of worked his way up, and while working his way up, learned a lot about cloud, specifically Azure, AWS and Azure, but I think specifically Azure. And then he left that company and was able to secure a pretty sweet gig because of his Azure experience. So he is a cloud guy. At this point in his career, he's a cloud guy through and through. He knows what he's doing. And we were talking, and he said, dude, you're wasting your time on your CCIE. There's no more networks. Networking is dead. It's all cloud now, man. It's all the cloud. There is no more networking. Well, that's interesting. And a lot of people share that view. And it's wrong. It's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Well, because you, Mr. Admin, you're sitting at your PC here, and you're connected to the cloud. So all you see is the stuff on your screen, and you know that same stuff exists in the cloud. So to you, it's just the cloud. There is nothing else. But what is the cloud? Well, first off, your PC has to connect to the cloud. So you still have your enterprise network, or you still have your VPN at home that connects you to your enterprise network, or you still have your ISP. That's all networking. Then in the cloud, what are you actually connecting to? You're connecting to a server that's in a rack. What's at the top of the rack? A switch. There's a row of racks. What's at the end of the row? More switches. What do those switches connect to? They connect to bigger switches. What do those switches connect to? They connect to big routers. Right? What do those routers connect to? They connect to service providers and ISPs. What do those service providers look like? Well, their network is what? It's a bunch of switches and routers. Switches and routers didn't go away. Well, you say, but Jeremiah, yes, they did. It's now all virtualized. Okay. So what happens? Do I care if I am working on a box that has a Cisco badge on the front, or if I'm logging in? Oops. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Or if I'm logging in to a virtual instance that is an application, and that application says Cisco or whoever. No, I don't care, but it's still networking. It's still a firewall or a switch or a router. Even if it's virtualized, it's still networking. You still got to speak networking protocols. You still got to configure routing. You still got to configure switching. It's all still there. It's not going away. However, that being said, and we talked about this recently, it is changing. It is changing. Because what we're going to see is that the jobs are going to start to look like this. We're down here, we have tier 1 type jobs, help desk type jobs, monitoring type jobs. And then what used to be tier 2 through 3, there's not going to be a whole lot of stuff there. This is all going to be automation. There's going to be a few jobs, and these people are going to be mostly DevOps people. But then coming back over here, where we got tier 4 through architect, there's going to be those jobs still going to be there. There's still going to need to be people to design the network, to do the advanced stuff, the stuff that's too complicated for the automation to do reliably and easily. A lot of this stuff is just going to be clicking checkboxes or, uploading some code. But there's still going to be plenty of network operations and troubleshooting that's going to require a real person. Most of these jobs are going to go away. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to get yourself over here if you want to work in networking. What's going to happen? We already see it. And if you look at the comments on my video, you see it. What is happening? These people are all saying networking is dead. And from their point of view, it is. So what are they doing? They're sublimating off. They're going to cloud. They're going to, some form of security, which is important. So they're leaving. They're going to find other opportunities, which means the people who have positioned themselves to be here are going to see their salaries begin to rise. What we've seen over time, recently, is, the CCIE used to be godhood, right? When I first got into, this is like 1998-ish. I was in a job. I wasn't really happy. I'm looking for other jobs. I'm on a job board. What do I see? I see a job for CCIE. That job, in today's money, when adjusted for inflation, was paying about $170,000 a year plus the company, a company-owned Lexus. So you got a luxury car to drive, to use, and $170,000 a year for your CCIE. Pretty sweet. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. We've seen that the CCIE salaries and their uniqueness and specialness and desiredness has slowly dropped off. When I finish my CCIE, I'm hoping that I'll be able to, I'm probably going to start, because I've been out of it for a while, I'm hoping to start around 80 and quickly work my way back up to like the 125-ish $1,000 range, That's where I'm hoping to get back to. But it's not the 170 grand and a Lexus like it once was. Now, however, and the reason I know this, and you can say, Jeremiah, no, you're wrong. And maybe I am wrong. But the truth is, I have already seen this. If you've been in the industry long enough, you've seen the cycles of technology. As technology comes and goes, new things come, old things go. The old things, that some sticks around. And what you see is that as people leave networking because, it's just not as sexy as it once was, those salaries then begin to climb again. So I am hoping that I can get a few years in, or in the 125 range, and then switch over to a consultancy where I become an independent contractor or consultant, and I can make good money for the rest of, until I retire, doing, odds and end projects as the demand for the CCIE level, that high-end networking continues or increases because there's fewer and fewer people doing the job. As an example of this, I used to work with a guy who, he was an expert in a specific type of phone system. And the thing was, everything was moving to VoIP, and those older style phone systems were dying off. Well, the company I was working for, we had a lot of customers with those older style phone systems. So we had people on staff who knew those older things. They tended to be older guys. Some of them were approaching retirement. And one of the guys that I worked with, he wasn't approaching retirement, but he happened to know this one phone system. He literally got a job working in a tropical paradise, making very good money, because he knew this older technology that most places have phased out. So he managed to, his career had gone from here. He took a little dip as the technology became less and less popular, but then he shot back up as all the people kind of dropped out of that field and made his skill set more rare. So that's kind of the wave that I expect to ride. At the same time, it's also worth noting that I'm not putting all my eggs in the Cisco basket. People seem to think that because I'm working on my CCIE, I'm putting all my eggs in the Cisco basket. No. The moment I finish my CCIE, I'm immediately starting on Juniper. Immediately. I want to get some Juniper certs. I want to do some Cisco security stuff. And then I want to look at maybe Aruba or HPE and see what else is out there and go from there. And then I want to go back to school. So this isn't ending. This is a never-ending journey until the day I retire, of constantly adding new skills, building new skills. So within a year after my CCIE is finished, I expect that I will know a lot more about cloud than I do today. I will know a lot more about other vendors than I do today. But you have to, I don't understand what these people are saying. They're like, I'm wasting your time with CCIE. Why learn all those protocols and technologies in depth when you can, get 4 different certifications at a high level, or whatever you want to call it, a mid-tier level of knowledge? Because that's the way to really advance your career, is to be mediocre at a bunch of things. You can make a good living doing that, or you can make a really good living being smart and really knowing the technologies and whatever. So that's my 2 cents about this whole thing. And I could be entirely wrong, but I don't think I am. So we'll see how it plays out. Hey, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.